You walk through the city of Alexandria. The sun is blazing and the air is thick with history. You can almost hear the whispers of scholars from centuries past. You pass a grand building. It's not just any structure, it's the Library of Alexandria. Well, it's the Library of Alexandria if it had survived the fires and the wars. Imagine the moment you step inside. The air smells of old parchment and ink. The walls are lined with shelves that stretch to the ceiling. You see scrolls, manuscripts, and books piled high. Some are written in Greek, some in Latin, and others in languages you can't even recognize. This place was once the center of knowledge in the ancient world, and you can feel its weight. You wander deeper into the library. The rooms are vast, filled with scholars and students. You catch snippets of conversations about mathematics, philosophy, and astronomy. It feels alive, buzzing with intellect. You notice a group gathered around a table, debating the theories of Euclid. They're animated, their hands flying as they argue over geometry. You spot a young woman at a nearby desk. She's copying a manuscript, her quill scratching against the papyrus. You wonder how many works she's preserving. You think about all the texts that were lost in the real world, the histories, the plays, the scientific discoveries. What if they were here, safe and sound? You take a moment to browse. You pull a scroll from a shelf. It's a treatise on medicine by Hippocrates. You can't help but feel a bit giddy. This isn't just a copy, this is one of the originals. You flip through the pages, and the ink is still dark, the text still legible. You think about how this knowledge could change lives. You head over to another section. This one is dedicated to astronomy. You see diagrams of the stars and notes on planetary motion. You think about how the ancient Greeks laid the groundwork for modern science. If the library had survived, would we have advanced our understanding of the universe even further? You overhear a conversation about a new invention, a water clock. The scholars are excited, discussing how it could revolutionize timekeeping. You realize that this library isn't just a place of learning, it's a hub of innovation. Ideas are being born here, and they're spreading like wildfire. You walk to a quiet corner. There's a scroll here that catches your eye. It's an ancient play by Aeschylus. You pick it up, and your heart races. If this library had survived, would theater have developed differently? Would we have seen different stories, different themes explored? You sit down in a cozy nook, scrolling through the ancient texts. It's overwhelming, the sheer volume of knowledge. You think about the impact this could have on the world. Would education be more accessible? Would literacy rates soar? You glance at the clock. Time seems to stand still in this place. You lose track of hours as you dive into the scrolls. You come across writings on philosophy, Aristotle, Plato, and Epicurus. Each thought-provoking line makes you question your own beliefs. You can't help but wonder how different philosophical thought would be today if these ideas had thrived. Then you hear a commotion outside. You peek through a window. There's a gathering in the square. Citizens are rallying for change, demanding knowledge and education for all. It's a stark contrast to what you see inside the library. Here, knowledge is hoarded and revered. Outside, the desire for enlightenment is raw and powerful. You feel the tension. The library represents a beacon of hope, but outside, there's a struggle for access to that hope. What if the library had been a place for the people? Would it have fueled revolutions, sparked movements? You can't help but think about how knowledge is often power, and how that power can shift the course of history. You head to the philosophy section. There's a massive scroll on ethics. You read passages about morality and justice. You think about how these ideas could shape society. If everyone had access to this knowledge, could humanity be better? As you roam the halls, you notice a room labeled Science and Discovery. You step in, and your jaw drops. There are experiments happening, alchemists mixing potions, mathematicians scribbling fervently. You can't believe this is real. This is where modern science could have been born centuries earlier. You walk past a group working on a rudimentary form of the scientific method. They're arguing about hypotheses and testing. You realize how pivotal this moment is. If the library had survived, would we have already solved some of the biggest mysteries of the universe? Would diseases have cures? Would we have discovered electricity? You stumble into a gallery filled with maps. These aren't just any maps, they're ancient explorers' notes. You see depictions of lands untouched, creatures unknown. This library could have been a launching pad for exploration. You think about the age of discovery and how it might have come sooner if this knowledge had been preserved. You take a seat in a small amphitheater. Scholars are gathered, and a lecture is about to begin. The speaker is an elderly man, his voice steady and commanding. He's discussing the nature of reality, blending philosophy with emerging scientific thought. You lean in, captivated. He poses a question. What is truth? The room falls silent. You can feel the weight of the question. You think about how different cultures have grappled with this concept throughout history. If this library had survived, would we have a more unified understanding of truth? The lecture ends, and the crowd buzzes with excitement. You overhear them discussing applications of what they just learned. You realize this knowledge is not just theoretical, it's practical. It could change lives, improve societies. You head back to the main hall. There's a display featuring inventions and innovations. You see a prototype for a steam engine. You can't believe it. This library could have been a birthplace for the Industrial Revolution. You think about how different the world would be. You catch a glimpse of a group of women studying. You smile. In this alternate reality, women are scholars too. They're not just relegated to the background. They're part of the conversation, part of the knowledge sharing. You wonder how this would have changed gender roles throughout history. You drift to a section on literature. You find original works from authors you've only read about. You pull down a scroll by Homer. It's surreal to think this was once lost. You ponder how the literary canon might have evolved. Would we have different classics, different influences? You take a break and grab a seat in a courtyard. The sun feels warm on your skin. You watch scholars debating, students laughing. It feels like a community, a vibrant exchange of ideas. You wonder if this library could have been a model for future educational institutions. You look up at the sky, and it hits you. The survival of this library might mean the survival of diverse perspectives. If knowledge had been preserved, would we have avoided some of the dark ages? Would humanity have made different choices? You notice a group of children nearby, their eyes wide with wonder as they explore. They're being taught the basics of literacy and math. You think about how vital this is. Would education have been a right rather than a privilege? You walk back inside, feeling invigorated. You approach the section on law. You find scrolls detailing ancient legal systems. You imagine if these systems had been refined and adapted over time. Would justice be fairer? Would societies be more equitable? You stumble upon a room filled with art. There are paintings, sculptures, and even pottery. Artists are collaborating, discussing techniques. You realize that creativity flourishes in an environment like this. If the library had survived, would the Renaissance have come sooner? As you leave the art room, you spot a young man sketching a design. He looks up and smiles. You chat about his vision for a new invention. It hits home how interconnected knowledge is. One idea inspires another, and the potential for innovation is limitless. You wander back to the main hall. The library feels like a living organism, constantly evolving. You think about how knowledge begets knowledge. If the Library of Alexandria had survived, would humanity be a step ahead? You take a final stroll through the aisles, absorbing everything around you. The weight of knowledge feels heavy, but in a good way. You wonder what the world would look like if people had access to this wealth of information. As you step outside, you see the bustling city. It's a vibrant place, full of life and ideas. You realize that the survival of the Library of Alexandria isn't just about preserving the past. It's about shaping the future. You walk away, knowing that this alternate reality is a powerful reminder. Knowledge can change everything. It can uplift societies, inspire individuals, and drive progress. You think about the legacy of the Library of Alexandria and how its survival could have rewritten history. And just like that, you're back in the real world. The weight of that thought lingers. Imagine if we treated knowledge like a treasure, something worth protecting. You can't help but wonder how different things might be.